I think GST is a wonderful new legislation. It's come in for a lot of misgivings because of perhaps not appreciating how things were in the earlier tax regime. Two things I would like to call out that GST has made great progress in. One, there is no such thing called discretion that any officer enjoys in GST. It always has to follow rule of law. So therefore, taxpayers have ample safeguards, rights, remedies that are protected. The next thing is that there is no such thing called spot recovery of taxes. No one can show up and say you need to pay so much taxes. So with these two things having been done away with, GST, it's only a matter of time before industry begins to reap the benefits of a wonderful legislation like GST. And even from a professional's point of view, sitting in Bangalore, I wouldn't be able to confidently advise a client in Hosur. It was just across the border in Tamil Nadu. But today, sitting in Bangalore, we are able to handle matters in Ludhiana, Asansol, Rajkot, all over the place. So in that sense, because the law is uniform, it's bound to bring all the benefits, whether it is a tier 1 city or any other city in the rest of the country. There are two ways to look at the issue of unhappiness in GST. One is an interim and one is a long-term aspect. The interim is that overnight we've moved into a highly technology dependent regime. It's not Cochin, Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, that is not India. India is every small town where business goes on, that is also India. So therefore, to make this jump overnight, that's an immediate challenge. From a longer term point of view, because of the amount of revenue at stake, there's a lot of hesitation to take a firm stand, whether it is from the taxpayer's point of view or from the tax administrator's point of view. And as history has taught us, when in doubt, book a case and let it get resolved in appeal. So therefore, this enormous real possibility that there is going to be an explosion of litigation for a good 20 years before things start settling down. If we can compare how things were in the past versus how things will be in GST, definitely the cost will get reduced because of the benefit of input tax credit that's allowed in GST. Now, whether a taxpayer, a businessman will pass on the benefit or not is a matter of market forces. We also need to bear in mind a simple layman or a simple taxpayer who we call, we often think this simplicity is equal to stupidity. We have to admit that the layman is very wise, the simple businessman is also wise because he knows what is the price point beyond which he cannot sell, no matter what is the tax rate. If the market won't absorb any upward revision in the price, he will find a way to meet that price point. So therefore, there are methods available for the taxpayer to understand and derive the benefit. Whether he retains the benefit or passes it on to his customer, that's a commercial call. But these things definitely exist in GST. So we should give credit to the simple businessman, ordinary layman, because he knows whatever you call the tax, however complex or simple it might be, eventually where the tire meets the road, they need to know what they are prepared to pay for it and therefore what should the taxes be. So I think we are oversimplifying GST's effects by saying that it's going to be burdensome. I don't think it's going to be burdensome. Perhaps there are some who have taken advantage of the opportunity that others are not as aware of these implications, but over a period of time, it's bound to compel everyone to pass on benefits, because ultimately, as long as their margins are protected, taxes will come in and will get collected and get discharged also. Because competition won't allow one player in an industry to be excessively expensive compared to the others. So things will settle down. It's absolutely beneficial, considering that you will have paid GST on your equipment, on your travel, on your stay, on your other services that you need to collaborate with professionals. So there's going to be a lot of input taxes that you are foregoing. So if you identify at which turnover threshold each professional operates, up to 20 lakhs, one is out of registration. Up to 50 lakhs, one is entitled to pay a composite rate of 6% tax without the responsibility of claiming all the credits. And beyond 50 lakhs, I think it's in one's own interest to go in for registration, claim all the credits and optimize the benefit of GST. First time we do it, it may seem complicated, but the 10th time you do it, it's part of every month's compliance. We have to look at this entire piece of legislation is not like poetry. It's not the most elegantly drafted legislation. But for what it's worth, it's the pride of India and it's the envy of the world, because there's no other country that can boast of having implemented such a significant reform in a such a short span of time. Call it haste, call it determination. I would like to look at only the positives here, because 1.3 lakh crores of revenue being collected in a not a fully opened up market situation is not a joke, and it's only going to get better. And I think we haven't still realized the full potential of revenue that can come in from GST each month. With that upside, I think these are all part of changes that needs to be we need to endure. As far as changes are concerned, there is on one hand what we applaud as the lack of discretion. On the other hand, we have to understand this inflexibility that is built in is so rigid that we are not able to swallow it. We'll need to some extent come to terms with these timelines that seem to be inflexible, and perhaps the government also needs to consider that during maybe the first 10-15 years, there's going to be bona fide mistakes. Taxpayers don't always want to play mischief with the law. They want to comply with the law, but they will make mistakes. There seems to be very little elbow room to set right your mistakes, and therefore some of those areas, some relaxation if it is allowed, then certainly it will make good for because GST is a self-assessment tax, and no one's already an expert in this law, and if we're able to get that elbow room to set things right, so that wherever taxpayers have discovered that they've made mistakes, have gone wrong in their own understanding of this law, they can set it right. It will even reduce the burden of administration to go after taxpayers who might have made mistakes. So therefore that aspect is one. The third would be to look at with the enormous data that the government now holds, a lot of analytics is being done to see how a system-driven administration can be implemented. And we're seeing, these are still early days, we're seeing a lot of adventurous analytics going on. I think that should settle down, should take some time, but those are the areas perhaps if it's ironed out, we will find enormous potential in GST that can benefit the nation. The first thing that scares me is there's so much of IT in GST that my generation of professionals find it hard to come to terms with this. So there's an enormous opportunity for youngsters to do all the work that they need to do by getting familiarized with the IT system, the portal that because notices come online, hearings are scheduled online, replies are filed, perhaps we will even have appeals being heard and filed and disposed of online. So that technology domain that is created this opportunity. That is one big thing. Some like me will struggle, and the youngsters who take to IT like fish takes to water. So that is one area. The other area is the changes that GST has brought in is there is a rapid erosion of a compliance based practice. For years and years, we have thrived on understanding the forms, the boxes, the columns, the cross references. We've got a good amount of mastery over those things, no matter what, whether it's income tax, sales tax, excise. We've learned that today that's rapidly eroding because, and it's a natural outcome of using technology where an intelligent system auto-populates data that is already filled in once so that it avoids error of duplication and so on. And with that, we'll need to adjust our areas of practice away from compliances more into advisory, pre-litigation to make sure that we don't get into litigation, plan that, and of course if litigation does ensue, that also. So that is really it's a welcome change, and I see in Cochin especially I've seen a lot of senior chartered accountants encourage youngsters that it's not something to be anxious about if you get notices. You just need to know how to respond to those notices, because ultimately this is a very transparent law. While we say this is complicated for the taxpayer, believe you me when I say this, when I've talked to tax officers, they are perplexed. How should they operate within the confines of each section? They can't simply show up and say this is the new tax that needs to be paid. So therefore, if rule of law prevails, I think it is something we should all welcome.